Warm welcome to all of you who are using our Connections program to grow in your faith, to study the Scriptures, and to get to know one another. We just celebrated the 13th week in Ordinary Time, so let's take a look at the Gospel for that week. This is a very important section in Luke's Gospel. A unique part of Luke's Gospel is Jesus' journey to Jerusalem. And it accounts for the middle third or the middle 9 chapters of the Gospel. So Luke really paid attention to this journey of Jesus in his Gospel. And it includes some of Luke's most important and unique material, the stuff only found in Luke. Today's Gospel is the very beginning of this journey. Jesus will achieve his mission that God has given him by dying in Jerusalem. And he goes there because, we're told, the days of Jesus' taken up were fulfilled. So the time has arrived for Jesus to be taken back up into heaven. So despite the cross awaiting him, Jesus resolutely determined to journey to Jerusalem. And Luke is real clear to tell us that. Today's gospel deals with Christian discipleship. A disciple is an apprentice. A disciple is not just a student, but a person who is learning from the master. And Christ's disciples learn to act and to be like the Master, like Jesus himself. His first teaching is directed to all the 12 disciples, and he teaches them how a Christian deals with rejection. Jesus was rejected by the Samaritans. Now, his next teachings are directed to 3 possible disciples. The first teaching is to all 12. Now, there's 3 individual disciples that Jesus has to teach or teach us about. The examples vary, but the general teaching for all 3 individual situations is the same. Jesus' followers will have to make choices and decisions. Jesus' followers will have to make choices and decisions about following him. And that's the point of the 3 scenarios Jesus addresses at the end of the gospel. And they will be expected to put following Jesus before everything else and above everything else. Jesus is real clear about that. So, as Jesus starts his journey to Jerusalem, he immediately begins teaching about discipleship. That's the point that Luke is trying to make. As Jesus starts his journey to Jerusalem, he immediately begins teaching about what discipleship really means. Let's make our little shift now and talk about how we can apply the gospel to our lives this week. You and I are disciples. We're apprentices of Jesus like those in the gospel. And we too are on a journey with Jesus in our lives. We too, like the 12 or like the other 3, are disciples or potential or possible disciples. So we too need to identify obstacles in our lives to being faithful disciples and remove them. We need to identify those obstacles and then remove them. So this is what I'm encouraging everybody to do. Identify obstacles to following Jesus in your life and remove them. I'm going to do that this week. I'm going to try to focus on the obstacles in my life and then do my best with the grace of God to remove them. It is interesting that Jesus' first teaching to the 12 deals with rejection. And we experience rejection sometimes because of our Christian faith. We experience rejection and disappointment in other ways as well, just because it's a human reality. As Jesus' students, revenge and violence have no place in our lives. The disciples were filled with revenge and violence, and Jesus reprimands them. So we are called to deal with frustration in a Christian way. We're called to deal with frustration the way Jesus dealt with it. The other 3 would-be disciples must face distractions. That's the point of those 3 situations. Well, we too have to deal with excuses and sometimes lack of commitment on our part to following Jesus Christ. There are plenty of ways that we are tempted to compromise and to water down our firm commitment to follow Jesus Christ. Jesus sets the bar really high for his disciples. He doesn't want lukewarm disciples. And the last three possible disciples are kind of borderline lukewarm disciples. So listen, let's resist the temptation to water down our Christian commitment, our personal commitment to Jesus Christ. Identify some personal obstacles in your life to following Jesus. And share them with people if that's going to help you to address them. A huge one is the pace of life, and we're all way too busy. So take specific steps this week to slow down and to remove that obstacle, which is the busyness and the hectic pace of life that we have. Take steps like maybe confessing sins that are obstacles in your life, or asking people to hold you accountable and ask them to pray with you and for you so you can overcome those obstacles.